The morning began before the sun rose. The city was still half asleep, its streets painted in the dull glow of streetlights and the faint shimmer of dawn trying to break through. He sat in the driver's seat of his car, staring at the Uber app on his phone. His finger hovered over the screen, and with a heavy sigh, he pressed "Go online." The car groaned when he started it. It wasn't new. The seats were worn. The steering wheel had cracks. And sometimes the engine sounded like it was begging for mercy. But it was his tool, his partner in survival. This car carried him through endless shifts, carried strangers to their destinations, and carried the heavy weight of his family's hopes. His day was predictable, yet always uncertain. Sometimes the app buzzed with rides back to back. Sometimes it stayed silent for long stretches, forcing him to burn fuel without earning a dime. He picked up all kinds of people. The polite, the rude, the indifferent. Some said, "Good morning," while others barely looked at him, eyes glued to their phones as if the driver wasn't human, just another moving part of the machine. But behind every polite smile and every ignored glance, behind the constant "turn left and arrived at your destination," was a man quietly carrying dreams too heavy for his worn-out shoulders. He worked 12 hours some days, 14 on others. The bills at home didn't care if he was tired. Rent was due. The electricity company didn't care if his back ached. Groceries didn't magically appear when his children were hungry. And so, day after day, he drove. There were days when his body screamed for rest, but the thought of his children kept him behind the wheel. There were nights when he returned home long after midnight, his eyes burning, his stomach empty, only to collapse on the couch for a few short hours before starting again. And yet, what stung the most wasn't just the exhaustion or the little money he made after expenses. It was the way society saw him, or rather, the way it didn't see him at all. To most people, he wasn't a man with dreams, fears, or dignity. He was simply the Uber driver, a background character in their busy lives, invisible. But invisibility doesn't mean insignificance. And here's where the first lesson of his journey lies. Life may not notice you now. People may overlook your effort, your sweat, your long nights, and your sacrifices. But the silence of recognition does not mean your work is wasted. Seeds grow in silence before they break the ground. For years, he felt trapped. He would look at his weekly earnings after paying for gas and car repairs, and despair would grip him. Is this it? Is this all my life will ever be? Just driving, 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 until the years pass me by? But even in that despair, a small ember burned inside him. He wanted more. He didn't yet know how, and he didn't yet know when. But he knew this. His story was not meant to end behind the wheel of an old car. Still, wanting more didn't change the present. The present was brutal. Long shifts, endless traffic, rude passengers, tight budgets, silent tears. But he endured, because sometimes the hardest roads are the ones that prepare us for the greatest destinations. It was a Thursday evening. The sky had turned a pale orange, and the city buzzed with people rushing home, eager to escape traffic before nightfall. He had already been driving for 10 hours. His back ached. His eyes were tired. His stomach was empty except for the cheap sandwich he had eaten hours earlier. The Uber app pinged again. Another ride. He almost ignored it, but something inside urged him to accept. He sighed, tapped accept, and drove toward the pickup location. The passenger was a middle-aged man in a crisp suit. His watch gleamed, his briefcase looked expensive, and his shoes shined like polished mirrors. Everything about him spoke of wealth, confidence, and success. "Good evening," the passenger said as he entered. Unlike most, his voice carried warmth. "Good evening, sir," the driver replied. His voice was polite, but tired. For the first few minutes, silence filled the car. The city's noise pressed in through the windows, honking horns, impatient drivers, the hum of engines. Then, the passenger spoke. "How long have you been driving Uber?" The driver hesitated, unsure how much to reveal. "About 3 years now," he said quietly. "3 years?" The man leaned forward slightly. "That's a long time behind the wheel. Do you enjoy it?" The driver gave a faint laugh. "Enjoy? Not really. But it pays the bills. At least most of them." "Most." The passenger nodded thoughtfully. "It's honest work. Nothing wrong with that. But tell me, is this what you want to be doing 5 years from now? 10 years? The question stung. It was simple, but it pierced like a knife. He had asked himself the same thing 1,000 times, but hearing it from someone else made it heavier. His hands tightened on the steering wheel. "I don't have much of a choice," he admitted. "I don't have money for school, no big skills. Driving is what I can do." The passenger studied him for a moment, then said words that would echo in his mind for years. "You're already working harder than most people I know. But here's the truth. Working hard in the wrong lane will never get you where you want to go. If you spend your whole life just working for money, you'll never escape. You need to learn how to make money work for you." Silence filled the car again. Those words didn't just land. They exploded inside him. Make money work for you. He had never thought of money like that. Money was always something he chased, something that slipped away too quickly. The idea that money could work for him felt impossible, almost magical. The passenger continued. "I used to be where you are, not driving, but struggling, barely surviving. Then I learned about investing. Small at first, painful at first. But over time, everything changed. If you can drive 12 hours a day for others, you can invest a few hours a day into your own future." The driver swallowed hard. His heart pounded. He wanted to ask questions, but words failed him. Before he could gather courage, they had arrived at the passenger's destination. The man stepped out, turned back, and said one last sentence. "Don't let this be your whole story. Start learning. Start today." And then he was gone. The driver sat in his car long after the passenger had left. The meter had stopped. The app waited for the next ride, but he couldn't move. Those words circled in his head like a storm. Working hard in the wrong lane will never get you where you want to go. Make money work for you. That night, he barely slept. He thought about his children. He thought about his future. He thought about the endless hours he had already given to a car that was breaking down, to passengers who barely noticed him. Was this really all there was? Could life truly change if he dared to learn something new? In that restless night, a decision was born. He whispered to himself in the darkness, "I will not just drive anymore. I will learn. I will invest. I will find a way out." Sometimes, one conversation can change your direction forever. Think about it. How many of us are just driving through life, day after day, without realizing we are stuck in the wrong lane? How many of us confuse movement with progress, busyness with purpose? This driver was working harder than most, But he wasn't moving toward freedom. He was moving in circles. It took a single sentence, a single stranger, to shake him awake. In life, you will meet people who plant seeds. They may not stay long. They may only appear for a moment. But their words can shift your entire destiny. Never ignore the power of a seed. And here is the call for you. What words are you holding on to? What advice have you ignored because it sounded too simple? And more importantly, what seed are you planting in others with your words? Remember, a seed can look small, but when it grows, it can break concrete. That night, after the conversation with the passenger, sleep refused to come. He tossed and turned, his mind replaying the words over and over again. Working hard in the wrong lane will never get you where you want to go. Make money work for you. The words were both heavy and liberating. Heavy because they reminded him how far he was from freedom. Liberating because they hinted that maybe, just maybe, there was another way. When dawn came, he rose not with energy, but with determination. After dropping off his children at school, he drove again. The app pinged. Passengers entered. Passengers left. But for the first time, he was not just thinking about survival. He was thinking about learning. That evening, instead of collapsing in front of the television as he often did, he walked into a library near his neighborhood. The place was quiet, filled with rows of books that smelled of paper, ink, and possibility. He wandered through the aisles until he found the section labeled Finance. The books looked intimidating. Charts, graphs, strange words he had never seen before. Dividends, equities, mutual funds, compounding interest. It was like a foreign language. He felt foolish. He thought, what am I doing here? I'm just a driver. I'll never understand this. But then another voice whispered inside him, you understood how to survive. You learned how to drive. You figured out how to raise a family with nothing. If you can learn that, you can learn this too. So he picked up a book. That night, under the weak glow of a flickering bulb, he began to read. The words didn't flow easily. He had to stop and reread sentences. He had to scribble down definitions he didn't understand. Sometimes, frustration nearly made him slam the book shut, but he stayed with it, page by page, line by line. At first, he devoted 15 minutes a night, then 30, then an hour. Soon, learning became his second job. And here lies a lesson. Knowledge feels expensive when you are tired, but ignorance will cost you far more if you stay in it. Weeks passed. Slowly, the strange words began to make sense. He learned about compound interest, how small investments could grow into large sums over time. He learned about risk and patience, about markets rising and falling. More importantly, he learned that wealth was not a game for the lucky. It was a game for the disciplined, and that was something he knew he could be. He started setting aside small amounts of money. At the end of each long day, after covering gas and bills, if he had even $5 left, he saved it. Some nights it was 10, once in a while, 20. To anyone else, it was nothing. To him, it was the seed of freedom. He cut expenses ruthlessly. No more takeout meals. No more impulsive spending. No unnecessary upgrades to his car. He carried the same phone long after others rushed to buy the latest model. His friends mocked him, saying, "You're too stingy. Live a little." But he would smile quietly and reply, "I'm not living for today. I'm building for tomorrow." It wasn't easy. The temptation to quit was strong. There were nights when he sat over his books, eyes half shut, head heavy with exhaustion, asking himself if it was worth it. But then he would remember the businessman's words. He would remember his children's faces, and he would whisper, "If I don't change this, nothing will change for them." So he pressed on. Day by day, he was not just a driver anymore. He was becoming a student of money, a student of discipline, a student of the future he dreamed of. And here is where the third great lesson lies. Dreams alone cannot save you. Hope alone cannot change your life. It is discipline, the decision to keep going when you are tired, to keep learning when you feel foolish, to keep saving when you want to spend, that turns poverty into wealth and despair into destiny. Think of your own life. Where do you need discipline? What knowledge have you been avoiding because it looks too hard? What habit do you need to build, even if no one sees or applauds? Remember this: small, disciplined steps, repeated daily, create futures that once looked impossible. The Uber driver was not born an investor. He chose to learn. He chose discipline. And discipline began to transform his story. Discipline had become his new companion, but discipline without sacrifice is incomplete. The first test of sacrifice came quietly. One evening, after a grueling 14-hour shift, his fellow drivers invited him out for food and drinks. It was payday, and everyone wanted to blow off steam. He wanted to join them. His body craved release. His heart longed for laughter and companionship. But he remembered the small jar at home, the one where he dropped his savings each day. $5 here, $10 there. It wasn't much, but it was his seed. He told his friends he couldn't come. They laughed. "You're too stingy," one said. "You work too hard not to enjoy yourself," another teased. But he smiled quietly and whispered to himself, "I'm not working for today. I'm building for tomorrow." The sacrifices grew heavier. He sold his old television, not because it was broken, but because it was a distraction. With no TV to waste hours on, he had more time to read and learn. His children complained at first, but he sat them down and said, "One day you'll thank me. Right now we are planting. Later we will harvest." He stopped buying new clothes. The same shoes carried him through multiple winters. When neighbors mocked him for not keeping up with trends, he reminded himself, better to be laughed at today than to cry tomorrow. He cut back on food expenses, cooking simple meals at home instead of buying takeout. He packed bread and boiled eggs to eat between rides while waiting for passengers. Every dollar saved was a dollar redirected toward his dream. And though the sacrifices were painful, each one strengthened his resolve. The greatest sacrifice, however, wasn't money. It was time. He woke before sunrise, drove until nightfall, and still forced himself to study when he returned home. His body begged for rest, but he refused. He knew comfort was the enemy of change. There were nights when his children were already asleep when he got home. That hurt the most. But even in those moments, he whispered, "This is not forever. I'm building something better for them." It has not been a Ben Sack tour. Sacrifice always looks foolish to those who don't understand it. Friends mocked him for driving an old car while they upgraded. Relatives told him he was too serious, that life was for enjoyment. But he had seen too many people enjoy themselves into debt, into slavery, into a life where tomorrow looked no different from yesterday. He chose differently. And here lies the fourth great lesson. Freedom is never free. It costs sacrifice. You cannot gain without giving up. You cannot reach the future while clinging to the comforts of the present. Every great destiny is purchased at the price of sacrifice. Think about your own life. What are you willing to give up? Are you willing to sacrifice the comfort of sleep for the discipline of study? Are you willing to sacrifice the ease of spending for the wisdom of saving? Are you willing to sacrifice being liked today for being respected tomorrow? Remember, the pain of sacrifice is temporary, but the pain of regret lasts forever. The Uber driver chose sacrifice, and though it hurt, each sacrifice was a brick in the foundation of his freedom. He was still behind the wheel, still unseen by society, still grinding through long shifts. But inside, he was no longer just a driver. He was a man building. He was a man preparing. He was a man willing to pay the price for the freedom he sought. It was a Saturday evening, quiet, cool. The kind of evening when the city finally breathed after a long week of rushing and noise. He sat at the kitchen table, staring at his phone. His children were in the other room doing homework, his wife folding laundry nearby, the radio humming softly in the background. But at that moment, everything faded. The only thing that mattered was the number on the screen. For months, he had been saving. $5 here, $10 there, $20 if the week was good. He had denied himself so many small pleasures, new clothes, evenings out, even the sweetness of a hot meal on the road. Every sacrifice had been dropped into his savings jar until finally he had scraped together enough to try. Enough for his first investment. His finger hovered over the buy button. The stock wasn't expensive. In fact, to many people, it was insignificant. The kind of investment most would laugh at. But to him, it was everything. It was proof that all the sleepless nights, all the skipped meals, all the hours of reading words he barely understood, they weren't in vain. But fear gripped him. His mind screamed, "What if I lose it? What if the stock crashes? What if this is just a foolish dream?" He almost closed the app. He almost gave in to fear. But then he remembered the businessman's words. If you can drive 12 hours a day for others, you can invest a few hours a day into your own future. He remembered the long nights when his body ached, but he studied anyway. He remembered every coin he had saved when laughter from the bar tempted him. And he whispered to himself, "I will not live my whole life just surviving. I must take this step." His finger pressed the button. Buy. It was done. At first, nothing happened. The number flickered on the screen, shifting up and down, as if mocking his hope. He checked it every hour, then every few minutes. His stomach tightening with every dip. The anxiety was unbearable. But as the days passed, he realized something important. This wasn't about quick riches. It was about patience. It was about planting a seed. That small purchase wasn't just money in the market. It was proof that he had stepped out of fear and into faith. Weeks turned into months. The stock rose slightly, then fell, then rose again. He learned quickly that markets were unpredictable, but discipline wasn't. He refused to sell in panic. He refused to be swayed by fear. Instead, he studied more. He read about market cycles, about long-term thinking, about resilience. And then one day, as he looked at his small portfolio, he saw something incredible. His money had grown not by much, but enough to remind him of the truth he had read in one of his books. Wealth is not built in leaps, but in layers. He smiled quietly, whispering to himself, "This is only the beginning." And here lies the fifth great lesson. The first step will always feel the hardest, but it is the step that matters most. Fear will whisper, doubt will shout, the unknown will paralyze you, but nothing changes until you move. Your first investment may not be in stocks. It may be in yourself, in your skills, in your business, in your discipline. But whatever it is, you must start. Start being afraid. Start small. Start uncertain. But start, because here is the truth. You can never harvest what you refuse to plant. The Uber driver's first investment wasn't large. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't enough to change his life overnight. But it was enough to change his mindset forever. He was no longer just a driver surviving each day. He was an investor planting for tomorrow. The first investment had lit a fire inside him. For the first time in years, he felt a shift within, not just the grind of survival, but the thrill of possibility. He had planted a seed, and it was growing. But every garden has weeds, and every journey has valleys. It started with a stock tip. One of his fellow drivers, who also dabbled in investing, told him about a sure win. It was a company everyone was talking about, hyped in forums, buzzing on social media. The driver hesitated at first, but the excitement around it was infectious. He thought, maybe this is my chance to leap forward. Maybe I don't have to wait years. So he put more money into that stock than he should have, money that had taken months of sacrifice to save. At first, it rose. His heart raced with joy as he saw numbers climbing, faster than anything he had invested in before. For a few weeks, he felt on top of the world. But then, the fall came. The company's numbers were not what people expected. The hype turned into panic. The price dropped, then plummeted. He watched helplessly as his savings bled away on the screen, turning redder and redder until what had once been hope was now fear. He sold in panic, desperate to save what little was left. And for days afterward, he carried the heavy ache of regret. Every hour behind the wheel felt heavier, every mile longer. He whispered to himself, "I'm just a driver. Who was I to think I could be an investor? Maybe they were right. Maybe this was foolish." Read. But life has a way of teaching through pain. One night, after dropping off his last passenger, he pulled over on a quiet street. He sat in silence, staring at his hands on the steering wheel. The loss still stung, but slowly, he realized something. Yes, he had lost money, but he had gained wisdom. He had learned that hype is not strategy. He had learned that fear is not leadership. He had learned that patience beats panic. Every time, that night, he wrote in his small notebook, the one he carried everywhere now, 3 words. Losses are lessons. The mistakes didn't stop there. Another time, he jumped into a stock without researching the company. Another time, he sold too quickly, missing out on gains. Another time, he spread himself too thin, investing in too many things without focus. Each mistake hurts, each mistake cut, but each mistake taught, and he noticed something powerful. His failures were shaping him more than his small victories ever had. Loss humbled him. Loss forced him to grow. Loss stripped away illusions and built resilience. And here lies the 6th great lesson. Failure is not the opposite of success. It is the classroom where success is born. Think about it. The driver could have quit after his first big loss. He could have said, "This isn't for me," and gone back to surviving paycheck to paycheck. But he didn't. He chose to see failure as tuition. We pay for school with money. We pay for wisdom with failure. What about you? How many times have you quit after failure? How many times have you allowed one mistake to convince you that you're not capable? What if, instead, you chose to see your losses as lessons? Remember this: every scar is proof that you survived, and every failure carries a seed of wisdom waiting to grow. The Uber driver didn't let failure end his story. He let it educate him. He became a student of loss, and in doing so, he became a man who would one day master success. Failure had bruised him, but it had not broken him. In fact, it had carved something deeper inside him: resilience. He no longer chased hype. He no longer panicked at the sight of red numbers. He no longer saw investing as a lottery, but as a long game, a journey of patience and persistence. And slowly, almost silently, things began to shift. He kept saving, even when it hurt. He kept studying, even when the books bored him. He kept investing, even when others told him he was wasting his time. And one day, as he reviewed his portfolio, he noticed something that made his chest tighten with quiet joy. His small investments were growing, not by leaps and bounds, not overnight, but steadily, like a tree stretching upward. Inch by inch, his portfolio was taking root. His first real expansion came when he took the bold step from stocks into real estate. It wasn't glamorous. He didn't buy a mansion or a high-rise. He bought a small, run-down property on the edge of town, the kind of place most people ignored. The paint was peeling, the roof leaked, and the neighbors doubted him. But he saw something others didn't: potential. He poured his savings into fixing it up. He spent evenings driving, hammering nails, painting walls, repairing pipes. It wasn't easy. His hands blistered, his back ached, and doubt whispered every day, "What if this fails? What if no one wants to rent this place?" But he pressed on. When it was finally ready, he rented it out. And for the first time in his life, he experienced something powerful: income that came while he wasn't working. Passive income. The rent check wasn't large, but it was steady. It meant his money was finally working for him, just as the businessman had said. That first property became his proof. If one worked, then two would work. If two worked, then five would work. And so, slowly, carefully, he expanded. Not all of it was smooth. Tenants delayed payments. Repairs cost more than expected. The car still broke down. Bills still came. But each problem became another lesson, another step toward mastery. As the years passed, his portfolio grew. Stocks and real estate side by side. Small seeds, watered with sacrifice and discipline, becoming trees that bore fruit. And here lies the seventh great lesson: consistency compounds. Wealth is not built by one lucky break. It is built by daily discipline, by small steps, repeated until they become unstoppable momentum. Think of water dripping on stone. One drop does nothing, but years of dripping carves valleys, shapes landscapes, and creates rivers. That is how consistency works. The Uber driver didn't become wealthy because of one miracle investment. He became wealthy because he stayed consistent when it was hard, when it was boring, when it was lonely, when no one applauded. What about you? What could happen in your life if you chose consistency over convenience? If you chose patience over panic? If you chose daily steps over occasional bursts? Remember, it is not brilliance that builds success. It is persistence. His life was still not perfect. He was still driving. He was still grinding. But inside, something had shifted forever. He was no longer surviving day to day. He was expanding. He was building. He was becoming. The road had been long. The sacrifices, the failures, the nights of exhaustion, the endless hours behind the wheel, all of it weighed on him like years of storm clouds. But storms do not last forever. One morning, as he sat at his kitchen table reviewing his accounts, he felt something he had never felt before. Relief. Not the fragile relief of paying rent just in time, not the temporary relief of a good week's earnings, but the deep, liberating relief of knowing that, for the first time in his life, he was free. His investments had grown. The properties were stable. The stocks he had nurtured for years had matured. He realized something shocking. If he wanted to, he could stop driving. He didn't need the Uber app anymore. His money was working for him. His years of sacrifice had turned into streams of income. He sat in silence, letting that truth wash over him. His eyes watered, not from sadness, but from gratitude. The man who once skipped meals so his children could eat now had the power to give them more than he ever dreamed. Yet freedom didn't come with fireworks. It came quietly, almost humbly. He still drove sometimes, but now it was by choice, not necessity. He enjoyed meeting people, hearing their stories, remembering where he had come from. But he no longer felt trapped. He no longer feared bills. He no longer panicked at car repairs. He no longer worried about tomorrow. And that's when he realized, freedom is not about having more, it's about needing less. He thought back to the countless passengers who never looked at him, who treated him like a machine. He thought about the nights of doubt when he whispered to himself that maybe he was foolish to dream. He thought about every tear, every sacrifice, every moment he almost quit. And he smiled, because every mile of struggle had led him here. And here lies the eighth great lesson. True wealth is not measured by possessions, but by freedom. You can buy luxury clothes and still be broke inside. You can drive a new car, but still be chained to debt. You can live in a big house, but still be enslaved by fear. But freedom, the ability to live on your own terms, to spend time with your loved ones, to rest without panic, to work by choice and not by force. That is the highest form of wealth. The Uber driver didn't start with money. He didn't start with privilege. He started with a broken car, long hours, and endless struggle. But he built freedom because he understood this truth. Money is a servant, not a master. What about you? Are you working for money, or is money working for you? Are you chasing the image of wealth, or are you building the substance of freedom? The day he closed the Uber app for the first time and didn't feel fear, he knew. His life had changed forever. He had broken free from the cycle of survival. As a driver, he was an investor. He was free. When the Uber driver finally reached financial freedom, his story was no longer just about him. It became a mirror, a lesson, a testimony for anyone who has ever felt stuck, invisible, or trapped in the cycle of survival. And so, let's draw from his journey the lessons that can shape our lives. Lesson 1. Don't just work for money. Make money work for you. Most people spend their entire lives working for money. They trade time for wages, hours for coins, life for survival. But the Uber driver learned that money, when disciplined, can become a servant. Think about it. You may have 2 hands to work with, but money has thousands. Every dollar you save and invest becomes an employee that never sleeps, never rests, never complains. While you work 8 hours, your money can work 24. So ask yourself, are you a slave to money, or is money serving you? Lesson 2. Sacrifice today for freedom tomorrow. Freedom has a price. The driver sacrificed outings, pleasures, and luxuries. People mocked him for being too strict, for denying himself fun. But years later, while they were still trapped in the same cycle, he was free. Your future self will always thank your present self for the sacrifices you make today. Skipping one unnecessary luxury may not look like much, but repeated daily, it becomes the difference between debt and wealth, between bondage and freedom. Lesson 3. Start small, stay consistent. His first investment was tiny. A few dollars. It didn't change his life overnight, but it changed his identity. He went from being just a driver to being an investor. And once identity shifts, destiny follows. So don't despise small beginnings. The gym starts with 1 push-up. A library starts with 1 page. Wealth starts with 1 saved dollar. The small things compound, and compounding is the secret of growth. Lesson 4. Failure is tuition, not defeat. He lost money. He made mistakes. He nearly gave up. But every failure taught him wisdom. He stopped chasing hype. He stopped panicking. He learned patience. And here's the truth. Failure is not your enemy. Quitting is. Failure is simply tuition you pay to the school of success. So don't run from failure. Embrace it. Learn from it. Let it make you sharper, stronger, wiser. Lesson 5. Your job is not your identity. For years, people saw him only as the driver. But his true identity was never bound to the steering wheel. He was a father, a student, an investor, a builder of freedom. Your job may be your source of income, but it is not your source of identity. Never let society reduce you to your paycheck. You are not just your job title. You are your potential, your vision, your persistence, your values. Lesson 6. Freedom is the highest form of wealth. The day he realized he didn't need the app anymore, he discovered the real definition of wealth. It wasn't the car he drove, the clothes he wore, or the number in his account. It was freedom. Freedom to rest without panic. Freedom to spend time with family. Freedom to work by choice, not by force. That's the goal. Not luxury, but liberty. So, what about you? Where do you stand in your journey? Are you just surviving, or are you building? Are you trading time endlessly for wages, or are you planting seeds that will outlive you? Remember, the Uber driver's story is not unique. It's possible for anyone willing to learn, to sacrifice, to stay consistent, and to refuse to quit. Your story may not involve driving, but it involves struggle. And struggle can either chain you or change you. The choice is yours. Finally, the journey of the Uber driver had started with struggle, continued with sacrifice, passed through the valley of failure, and ended with freedom. But his story is not just a tale to be admired from afar. It is a mirror, a challenge, a call to action. Think back to where he began, behind the wheel of a rattling car, working endless hours, invisible to the world. He was tired, underpaid, and overlooked. Life told him that this was all he would ever be. But he refused to accept that ending. He chose discipline over despair. He chose learning over excuses. He chose sacrifice over pleasure. And because of that, he built freedom. Now think about where you are. Maybe you're not a driver. Maybe you're a teacher, a cashier, a cleaner, a nurse, a student, or an office worker. Maybe you are unemployed, struggling, searching for your next opportunity. It doesn't matter where you are, because the lesson of this story is simple. Your current situation does not define your final destination. Ask yourself these questions. Are you working hard in the wrong lane? Are you living just to survive? Or are you building to thrive? Are you planting seeds? Or are you just consuming everything today? Do you run from failure? Or do you let it teach you? The Uber driver's breakthrough didn't come from luck. It came from decisions. Decisions to learn. Decisions to save. Decisions to start small. Decisions to keep going when it hurt. And you too are one decision away from changing your life. Remember, greatness is not built in giant leaps. It is built in small, invisible, daily steps. A dollar saved, a page read, a skill practiced, a failure endured, a sacrifice made. Do not despise your small beginnings. Every mighty tree began as a seed. Every long journey began with a single step. And every life transformed began with one choice. I will not give up. So today, I challenge you. Rise above your excuses. Rise above your fear. Rise above the voice that says, it's too late, you're too old, you're too poor, you're too uneducated. That voice is a lie. The Uber driver was not special. He had no privilege, no advantage, no head start. What he had was persistence, and persistence is available to you too. If he could rise from behind the wheel of a car to financial freedom, then so can you. One day, years from now, someone will ask about your story. What will you say? Will you say, I wanted to change, but I never did? Or will you say, I fought, I sacrificed, I endured, and I built a future greater than my past? The answer lies in what you choose today. Now, I want to hear from you. What is your Uber driver story? What are you struggling through right now that could one day become your testimony? Share it in the comments because your words might be the seed that gives someone else hope. And if this story moved you, subscribe to Motivational Dose. This is where ordinary people's stories remind us of extraordinary possibilities. Hit the notification bell so you never miss your next dose of motivation, and share this video with someone who feels stuck. You never know, this could be the story that keeps them from giving up. Remember, your struggle today is shaping your strength for tomorrow. Your pain is not the end. It is the preparation for your breakthrough. Keep driving. Keep building. Keep believing. Because one day, just like the Uber driver, you will look back and say, I was not just surviving, I was becoming. And now, I am free.